welcome to the in-depth series of Drishti IAS. My name is 𝐃𝐫𝐢𝐬𝐡𝐭𝐢. The ORION Spacecraft has made a splashdown in the Pacific Ocean on 11th of December 2022. Now, this has created a boost towards the Artemis second program of NASA. We will discuss all this today. Before we move on, I would like to intimate you about a course that we are providing for Prelims 2023. It's an online course that will be available through the Drishti Learning app, and it is available from 9th of January 2023. It has 300 plus hours of classes plus free access to 25 mock tests. Current affairs crash course for your prelims examination will also be provided, and the DCAT magazine. To know more about the details, you can call on the given number, or you can also visit our website. Now let's move forward and talk about the various things that we are going to discuss today. These are the many things. Specifically, as a curious student, one thing that might always come to your mind. What is splashdown? Why do spacecrafts always, when they return back to the Earth's atmosphere, why do they choose to land on water and not at the land? And what is the history of the moon exploration? That's also important. How is Artemis 1 different from NASA's earlier lunar missions and India's lunar program? Plus, why do we need to go to the moon and the way forward? Plus a question in the last. So Artemis program is basically the next generation of lunar exploration strategy. It is a program that consists of basic tools that will be deployed in order to explore lunar surface and atmosphere. It is named after the twin sister Apollo from the Greek mythology. The first in a series of increasingly complex missions. It wants to enable human exploration to the moon and Mars both. Land humans on the moon by 2024 is one of its objectives, and it also plans to land the first woman and first person of color on the moon. And it also already has the Artemis base camp on the surface and a gateway, which is the lunar outpost around the moon in the lunar orbit, the moon orbit. And also it wants to enhance exploration by robots and astronauts both. Moving ahead, what are the other details of this particular program? There are many other agencies that have collaborated with NASA. Canadian Space Agency has provided advanced robotics for the gateway. European Space Agency has committed the provision of international habitat and the Esprit module. The Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency has committed to provide habitation components and logistics resupply for this program. So remember this from the perspective of prelims. If we talk about the Artemis 1 mission, this is the first integrated flight test of NASA's deep space exploration system with the help of. Next is the Space Launch System, through which the Orion spacecraft was launched. This rocket is the most powerful rocket in the world. It can travel 280,000 miles away from the Earth for over 4 to 6 weeks during the course of the mission. And the newly upgraded exploration ground system at Kennedy Space Center in Cape Canaveral, Florida. So remember, if it is asked in prelims about the components, you know this. So if we talk about the Orion spacecraft, this is NASA's spacecraft to send humans into space. And it can send astronauts farther into space than ever before beyond the moon and to asteroids and even Mars. And when they return to the Earth, the astronauts will enter our atmosphere at speed over 32,000 km per hour. The capsule, although landing back at such a great speed, needs to be questioned. Because of the friction, sheer friction, it can also result in accidents, but the capsule will protect them and ensure a bumpy but safe landing. And Orion's first test flight came in December 2014 through Delta IV heavy vehicle. It put the capsule into a highly elliptical orbit and soon brought it back for splashdown in the Pacific Ocean. So Orion will basically serve as the exploration mission or exploration vehicle. It will carry crew to the space, provide emergency abort capabilities. It will also sustain the crew during the space travel and provide safe re-entry from deep space. Now, why do we need re-entry? Why do you think we need that? First, technology advancement. Second, it will reduce space garbage, because if it remains in space, it will be a garbage in space. Apart from that, it will also reduce the cost of making spacecraft over and over and over again. So these are the many benefits of this move. Alright, Orion will launch. This we have, of course, covered right now. The current trajectory, Orion returned back to the Earth. After the 35-day mission, it passed about 127 above the moon in a flyby. That means it wouldn't land. Flybys do not land. Flyby just pass by, okay, into the atmosphere. It entered the Earth's atmosphere at a speed of over 40,000 kilometers per hour, and it made a fiery 20-minute plunge into the ocean, Pacific Ocean. So where did it land? It landed in the Pacific Ocean off Mexico's Baja California Peninsula. Baja California Peninsula will be asked in your examination. Of course, if it is in the news, you have to be very careful about it. This is the Baja California Peninsula. This belongs to whom? Which country? Mexico. Remember that, okay? And it also has Sea of Cortez to the north of it. And if, of course, we are talking about the Pacific Ocean, I will try to cover this portion on the News on Map series, okay? And it also the Orion performed a new landing technique which is called the skip entry. Here, what happens in skip entry, that the spacecraft entered the upper atmosphere. It used the atmosphere and its lift to skip back outside. So it was coming like this. This is the Orion spacecraft. This is the upper atmosphere. So when it entered the Earth, it used the atmosphere as a lift to skip back and then come back to the atmosphere, okay? And when this was performed, this was a very unique technique. So it experienced, although when it was coming back, the spacecraft experienced such friction and pressure that its forward-facing surface could have generated temperatures likely to reach around 3000 degrees Celsius. That's a huge amount of temperature. Now, what is splashdown? Splashdown is basically landing into the ocean, okay, into water. And what happens? Why is it preferably chosen over land? Because land or landing on an uneven ground, it could lead to the capsule tipping over and even rolling down a slope, resulting in death of the astronauts, accidents, and of course the wastage. Even with parachute braking, even if there is a provision of parachute, the astronauts coming back on the atmosphere, in the atmosphere through parachutes, space capsule, they hit the ground pretty hard enough so that they can, damage the, first of all, capsule and resulting in death of the astronauts. Landing on water is also fairly abrupt. That is, of course, never to be questioned. But because of the splash the water provides, what happens that it is pretty smooth after a period of time. Okay, it provides a final stretch of relatively smooth braking. And once that happens, the recovery of the astronaut is another process after that. So boats can be carrying the astronauts back from there, the boats coming off the coast and then carrying them back to the land. And this particular Orion spacecraft was also, it was also done so because US launch sites are coastal. They are at the coast. And their launch paths stretch out over the ocean. So this is one of the reasons as well. What is the history of lunar exploration? See, during the era of 1950s and 60s, USA and USSR, Soviet Union, both were in a space race or a space war. Who could reach the moon first? So both the superpowers were looking towards the moon. In 1959, the Soviet Union launched uncrewed Luna 1 and 2. These were the first rovers to go there. Then the US begins to try to put people in the moon from the 1961. 3 classes of robotic missions were took place between the years 1961 and 1968 by the USA. And then on 20th July 1969, Neil Armstrong along with Edwin Buzz Aldrin became the first human to step on the moon. Alright, so remember that. And this was done through Apollo 11 mission, remember. Moving ahead, after July 1969, 12 American astronauts walked on the surface of the moon. That was till 1972. A renewed interest interest in the moon came again in 1990s. Then USA resumed lunar exploration with robotic missions, Clementine and Lunar Prospector. Then comes 2009 when Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter and Lunar Crater Observation and Sensing satellite was also launched by the USA. Then comes 2011, NASA began the Artemis this year only. Then in 2012, Gravity Recovery and Interior Laboratory spacecrafts, it studied the moon's gravity. The European Space Agency, Japan, China and India are one few of the countries that which have very comprehensive lunar exploration mission. China landed 2 rovers on the surface, which includes the first ever landing on the moon's far side in 2019. So how is Artemis 1 different? Again, the same thing that I am going to reiterate over here. Earlier it was a Cold War era or a Space War era. Then technology wasn't also as developed as we have right now. The motives are also very different because earlier, back then, it was just space war, trying to be who will conquer the moon first. So now it's another thing, experimenting. More and more technological evolutions can take place. So we can know about the history or the future or both of the Earth, because moon is something that is holding a lot of historical records. Now let's know about the India's lunar mission. It was only in 2007 when Chandrayaan-1 was conceived because of an agreement between ISRO and Russia's Roscosmos for mutual cooperation. And in January 2013, it was supposed to be launched, but because of delay from Russian side, it could be only done in 2016 because the Russian one unable to develop the lander. Then comes Chandrayaan-2, which was a fully indigenous orbiter. Lander was named Vikram and rover was named Pragyan. The rover Pragyan is actually housed inside Vikram Lander, and it wanted to have a soft landing, for which it was a failure on that part, that it could not do the soft landing. Then again it will be tried in Chandrayaan-3. Can somebody tell me in the comment segment when is Chandrayaan-3 supposed to be going to the moon? Why go to the moon, as I asked? Because moon holds a record of Earth's early history, as theories confirm. Theories not confirm. Theories are theories because they are unconfirmed. Theories say that it is important. It is very important for us to know that moon was created from Earth. So because of that, it is touted that it is having a history for Earth's evolution as well. New views of early Earth, how the Earth, Moon system and solar system was formed can be taken out from these records. Also, what was the role of asteroid impacts in influencing Earth's history? It is an excellent place to test technology such as the flight capabilities, life support system and exploration techniques, so that when our future missions are going to take place, risks are reduced and there is an increase in the productivity of future missions. Many a times this site, if we develop sustainable sites on the moon, medical researches can also take place over here. And also the mineral resources which we lack on the planet Earth, such as the lack of water, might also be solved from the moon. So let's now talk about the way forward. See, for Artemis 2nd, the second flight under the program will have a crew on board and it will test Orion's critical system with humans on board. Okay, so this will be another achievement of the mankind, of the humankind. I'll be more inclusive. Eventually, the learnings from the Artemis program will be utilized to send the first astronauts on Mars as well. So once we achieve a small planetary, if not planetary, then a heavenly body, if we achieve sustainability there, then it will open doors for others as well. Now let's move on to the question that you have to answer, and I will take the names of those who will answer this question correctly. I will take the names of those students right now who have answered the last question correctly. See this question, which of the following pairs is or are correctly matched? Okay, so you have to reply through comment segment. Let me take the names of those who have answered my last question correctly. B was the correct answer and many of you have answered it correctly. Let me take the names of those who have answered it correctly. Many of you have done so. Thank you so much. Okay. Ujjwal, Nemali, Tushita, Nidhi, Sagarika, Half and Full, Pallavi Jangir, Nidhi, Archana, then Neelam, Daksha, Shirley, Ashish, Naveenism, Nitya, Devika, Rupal, Sudhanshu, Krishna Pratap, Riyansh, Puneet, Rahul, Mahendra, Simran, Simari Aking, then Tanya, Ashwin, Bhargavi, Richa, Anirudh, Nishant, Ramesh, Rupali, Amisha, Rohit, Sanoj, Ranjita, Srinivas, Anuj, Mohin Khan, Priyanka, Aditya, Aarti, Vinayak, Abhishek, Rehan, Vikash, Soumya, Nibha, Anita, Anshika, Vani, Periadurai, beg your pardon, Unstoppable, Faizan and Mahima. Thank you all so much. You all are among my favorite students. You can answer this question as well for me to take your names in the next segment. Thank you so much for watching.